Hey guys, Bun here. Today I want to bring you 5 decks to play for the second week post Warrior nerfs. I saw that the previous video I made where I ran down some decks to play in the new meta and give a really short explanation on how to play them was really well received, and I was thinking that I could make more videos like this, preferably every weekend if people really like the format. And then I could introduce, if there's new decks that are being played, I could introduce new decks every week. And if there aren't any really new decks, I can talk about developments within the meta, because of course we don't only have new decks, but decks are also getting refined and made a lot better over time. So if I'll be reintroducing the same archetype, I'll be reintroducing different deck lists because they might be considerably better, and then I'll explain to you really briefly why they are so much better and what the different choices and cards are. So let's see if this video is well received. We might as well make it a weekly thing and put a video out like this every weekend. But let's dive right into it. We have, for the second week of post Warrior nerfs, I have a new deck that has popped up. Last week we had Big Spell Mage as the new deck that might be cool. Now we have Ping Mage as the new deck. Of course, the important cards here to keep are Wildfire, Arcanologist, like early card draw. You might as well also sometimes Arcane Intellect and Multicaster are fine if your hand already sets up for this. Those are really important card draw cards. You need to find your card draw early to be able to get your deck rolling. So I would also include Multicaster down here, and Arcane Intellect as cards that are possible. Of course, if you play against aggro and you know it, you can just keep Amplified Snow Flurry as a good anti-aggro tool and First Flame. I've covered Ping Mage before on this channel. The deck hasn't changed super much, just the matchups have. Commander Sivara can be really good if you're playing against a greedy matchup. Or, let's say, if you're in coin, Sivara is often really good, especially if you have like a Wildfire or Ruined Orb or First Flame already, depending on what your matchup is. So Commander Sivara can really be a nice keep if you have a matchup, especially on the coin. And then, of course, I think for most matchups, unless you're like super desperately searching for anything else, Magister Dawngrasp is super important, because it's the way that you finally scale your hero power, you scale the damage, and you finally win the game, because everything else is just stalling tools. In order to win the game, you need to scale your hero power with a Magister. So that's really important, and that's why this card is also a keep, even though it's one of the most expensive cards that this deck has to offer. Next up, we have Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin has been on top of the meta. I've been a little bit reluctant to feature because I think it's very straightforward, but I think it's one of the better decks and it's definitely worth giving a shot. That's why I want to feature it here. It has some really good matchups into aggressive decks, especially into Rogue. It did have that before the nerfs as well, and it's just gotten better, because your best card, Cariel, is still your best card and still wins the game, even though it's more expensive. But the Rogue nerfs has impacted it a lot more than the Paladin nerfs. So let's get to the Mulligan. Mulligan are your cheap minions: Knight of Anointment, Battle Vicar, Alliance Bannerman, and Shimmering Sunfish. The Pogfish is a really good anti-aggro tool, and the other cards are just kind of card draw, which is really important to feature into this deck, so that you can get the ball rolling with macro rolls to discount your Garden's Grace and your Light Rays and play expensive cards. Cariel Rome can sometimes be a keep if you play against very specific matchups, but I wouldn't get into like it right now. But if you at some point think, I could have kept this here, just make sure I said this, and you might feel the same way. But like in general, I don't think it's a good keep, but just while you're learning the deck, that's something that you could keep in mind. And then, of course, Light Force Cariel is the glue that holds this deck together, so you always keep this card as well. It's just so overpowered, especially if your opponents don't run weapon removal. It just saves you from everything, and it lets you scale really quickly with the hero power, being able to buff your deck and your hand very quickly. Of course, only the minions in hand, but it'll be increasingly difficult for your opponent to, how do we say, to combat your minions, to deal with them. Yeah, and you can of course buff Mr. Smite for lethal. If you're feeling a little bit more adventurous, I have decided to include another list into this here, where the win condition of Mr. Smite is replaced by a win condition of Kazakusan. I don't think this is the better deck list, but I think this is one of the more fun deck lists. So that's why I've included it here shortly into this video. You have a little bit of a dragon package. And if you're feeling adventurous, feel free to try this out and maybe try to see if you can have some fun with this specific list. Here we have Curse Warlock. Curse Warlock is one of the newer decks that's been coming up into the meta. Of course, this has a really good matchup into Shaman, into Paladin. Rather mad matchup into Demon Hunter. That's why it's popped up, especially because on some levels you just see a lot of Shaman. It has a good board removal tool while it offers inevitability. It also is decent against Ping Mage that I introduced earlier, so that's why this deck has become more popular, especially at higher ranks. And so for the mulligan, of course, against most deck, you just keep Mistress of Mixtures because you only one drop. If you're on coin, Goldshire Null is very good because you just, if you tap on 2 and tap on 3, you can play the Null really, really early. Put a little pressure on board. One of the things with this deck is if you get to push any early damage with the deck, you're getting just this much closer to being able to finish the game. And it's really, really helps the game plan. And then, of course, Dreadlish Camson is a key card. It's not always a keep card. You don't always keep it in your mulligan, but I just wanted to highlight it because it's a very important card, because against some slower decks, it's the only way how you consistently make boards. Against most aggressive decks, 3 AoE while drawing 3 cards and getting 5 armor is also really good, because it heals you while it also clears the board, so oftentimes becomes a really key card in the matchup. And that's Curse Lockwork for you. You want to tutor your game plan depending on what your opponent's playing. So if you're against a more aggressive deck, you can keep removal cards such as Touch of the Netherzim, Drain Soul, Drag Below. And if you play against a really slow deck, you can keep the Cultist to be able to put some early curses in your opponent's hand and just be able to play some cards on curve rather than just being reactive. But this part of the mulligan I didn't highlight because it's just very, very dependent on what you're playing against. Removal against aggressive decks, and then minions to play against slower decks. Alright, next up we have Jackpot Rogue. Jackpot Rogue is one of my favorite personal decks. I've been playing it a lot on stream. If you want some gameplay of that, be sure to check out the videos in the description. I have a bunch of funny decks. With Jackpot, you can just do a bunch of really, really memey game outcomes and some creative ways to find lethals, especially together with like reconnaissance and wicked stabs and whatnot. You can find some crazy outcomes. I had a game where I just stacked spell power minions into my stash and then killed somebody from 30 HP using stash as well as wicked stabs, and then another copy of the spell that I got from Queen Najara. Cards that you keep here are the Null, and of course cards that make the Null cheaper, which is the Cutlass is always a keep because you make the Null cheaper, and it's the only way for you to effectively spend 1 mana at turn 1. Shroud also, if it's played before your hero is revealed, will make the Nulls cheaper, so that's another way to cheat out a Null, which is just basically the Nulls aren't that much aggressive tools anymore as they used to be. They're more a tool that just gets you through the early game. So that's why these cards are good. And then Reconnaissance, Touch, those are good cards. They're a little bit dependent on what your opponent plays, but they might be keeps. And of course, if you have a Jackpot, you can keep a Trickster, and you can go Jackpot and Trickster and have some fun with these. If you're on coin, you can often keep Najara as well, because coin Najara into Colossal is pretty sick. And then I have a new Control Warrior build. It's pretty much looking the exact same way as the old Control Warrior. Luna got rank 1 with this deck, so Control Warrior isn't entirely depth. You just don't play Depths or Finley anymore, but you play a different kind of build. You try to push more damage with Galvangar, but your mulligan is kind of the same. I can just refer you to the videos I played before. Obviously, Depths and Finley aren't a thing anymore, but Shield Block, then your assortment of 4-drops, especially the Outriders Axe, is a very good keep because it gets the card draw going into your game. And then, of course, if you play against super aggressive decks, you definitely want to keep Shield Shatter, because even though the card got nerfed, it will still deal with a lot of the aggressive boards. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you like this video, and if you like these kind of content, deck updates, let me know in the comments below. That would leave a like on the video as well. That would really let me know that this is content that you specifically want to see. And if this video does well again, I think I'll make this a weekly series. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one, and I'll see you on stream.